So, India. Now, I know that you have lupus and you're going to treatment plans for it. So, how do you describe lupus to people who don't know what it is?
Well, sarcastically, the first thing I always say is that it's the underappreciated cancer, and because I have it, I'm allowed to say that without people looking at me funny. But an easy way to understand it is that lupus thinks that your body is a foreign invader, like your blood, your organs, your joints and stuff, so it sends its immune system to attack it. So like mine started with blood. It thought that my platelets were an infection, so it ate essentially my platelets, and then my joints, and then so on and so forth.
Can you talk a little bit about how you came to have lupus? Because you had mentioned before that it's a disease and not a condition, but people can't catch it from you. So explain a little bit about that.
Lupus is actually a genetic thing. It's an autoimmune disease, and I am the third generation of autoimmune diseases, but I'm the first one with lupus. So my grandma had Sjogren's, which is eyes, and my dad had psoriatic arthritis, which is purely joints, and then I have lupus, which is like all of the above.
All right, so can you give a brief overview about how lupus affects your day-to-day life?
Lupus just makes everything challenging, especially in Florida. I have no heat tolerance, so the longer I stand outside, I get migraines, I get sick to my stomach, so I spend a lot of my life indoors. I can't open jars or cans or anything because of the arthritis in my hands. Like I said, I get migraines. It's tough. It's, like I said, with the underappreciated, it's an awful thing that not a lot of people know about.
So you're going to treatment right now. Can you talk about how often you go to these treatments and what they do while you're there?
Sure. So the crack of dawn, every fourth Friday of the month, my mom and I get up and we drive to Shands, which is in Gainesville. It's a pediatric rheumatology clinic. And the drug that I'm on right now is called Benlysta, and every 4 weeks you go in. It's an IV infusion. It takes about 2 hours. They start with Benadryl, Tylenol, and a steroid to make sure that you don't go into any kind of like anaphylactic shock. And then the infusion itself takes about an hour and a half. I don't do IV Benadryl very well, so I sleep through about 3/4 of it every time.
So this isn't the first treatment plan that you've been on. You were on a different treatment plan before, and this one is actually experimental that you're on right now. So can you talk about the old treatment plan and why you stopped it?
Sure. So the first one I was on was called Rituxan, and before you even get to a point of Rituxan, I was on oral medications for about 2 years trying to fix it, and when everything else fails, this is the next step that you go to, is infusions. And Rituxan was interesting because it took about 7 hours. It was a long, very long day, but it was every 3 months. So it was like very, very bad, but only so often, as opposed to what I'm on now, which is less bad, but more consistent. And the problem with the Rituxan, why we stopped it, was that I developed chronic respiratory infections. And in any biological drug, when you start to get reoccurring infections, it means that you have to get off the drug because your body's found a way around it.
So when you realized that you needed to be off of that treatment plan, they put you on a new treatment plan, which, like I said, is experimental. Can you talk a little bit about that treatment plan?
Sure. So they stopped the last one. It was my 19th birthday, and I was hospitalized for pneumonia because I had had like 8 back-to-back respiratory infections in front of that. So they moved over to the Benlysta, which is scary because when I started it, the FDA had probably approved it about 6 months beforehand. And what makes it experimental is that nobody's finished. Like, in theory, the goal is, you're on it every 4 weeks, and then they try to space you out to 5 weeks, to 6 weeks, to 8 weeks, and then hypothetically, you'll be done. One day, you'll be so far apart in doses that when you stop it, your body won't resort back to killing itself. And I know, other than me, there's one kid who's in front of me who has made it to the 8-week point. So he's kind of what we're striving towards.
So how does it feel to essentially be the guinea pig for this new drug?
It's interesting, actually. They called me a couple weeks ago. The Benlysta company called me and said they would pay me $100 to do a survey. And being the neglectful college student that I am, totally forgot to do it, and we lost their number. So that was $100 I did not get. But it's interesting, but it's also hard because other doctors have no idea. Like, when I have a respiratory infection or the flu, you know, you have to take into account, I am on this crazy experimental drug that alters everything. So it's not just like, you know, here's some antibiotics, have a nice day. So that makes doctors a little challenging. I've been having some stomach issues, and my gastroenterologist knows of lupus, but nothing of Benlysta. So his treatment has to mesh with the other treatments, and that's a challenge. That's really hard.